spend time in this week of Thanksgiving talking about Plymouth Rock, the place where the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts. What you may not know is about 150 years after the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, the townspeople decided to drag the rock to the center of town so it could serve as a memorial. And when they did this, the rock broke. It was a disaster. And what happened is the broken pieces ended up in different places. And one of those broken pieces ended up at the Sandwich Street Harlow House, as of all things, a doorstep. Now, if you think about that for a moment, that a piece of Plymouth Rock becomes a doorstep that people trample on, that people step on, that people give no thought to, all of a sudden it becomes a powerful metaphor for how we've come to understand how people came to different places. And when a new society came and took over, what happened to those who were already there? And so all of a sudden, really years and years before we have a vocabulary and an understanding that it is important to talk about those things, we have the symbol of a piece of Plymouth Rock being used as a doorstep, an apt and powerful metaphor. It was, of course, taken from that doorstep and is now at the Smithsonian, but it serves as an enduring reminder that sometimes we need to look at things from the viewpoint of the rock. So it is with Rav Kook, who was concerned that people were wailing and screaming and crying at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. And so he wrote something in the early 1900s and said, don't reflect on your sadness when you come to this rock, to this stone, to this Western Wall. Instead, move your perspective to behind where God sits in the Holy of Holies. And imagine looking out from the Holy of Holies through to the Western Wall, which they were calling the Wailing Wall. And God doesn't wail and God doesn't cry. God rejoices at God's people. So the perspective of the rock and how we look at that rock matters. It is in this week's Torah portion that we also have a rock. Jacob lays his head down in the portion of Vayetze to sleep. He is at a difficult time in his life. He has fled from his home after he's stolen the birthright from his brother Esau, and he is not sure where he is going on yet. And so he lays down to sleep on a rock, like the Plymouth Rock or like the rock of the Western Wall. This rock becomes potent. Jacob lays his head on it and dreams marvelous dreams of God providing everything that a future for the Jewish people will need. And Jacob wakes up from his dream, refreshed, excited, feeling God's presence. And then he goes on to meet the love of his life, Rachel, who he will come to marry along with her sister and two concubines as well. What is powerful about all these three rocks, the Plymouth Rock, the rocks of the Western Wall, and the rock that Jacob slept on, is that we make them come alive because we give a story to them, we give meaning to them, and we give power to them. Jacob could have just as easily been sad and upset and angry that he was sleeping on a rock. But instead, he was thankful. He was thankful to lay his head down. And out of that thanks came incredible dreams and connection with God. And a doorway and a pathway opened up to a beautiful Jewish future. That is what happened when Jacob looked at that rock with joy and with love. And so perhaps in this week of Thanksgiving, in this time of COVID, we need to fathom our perspective. In the same way we could see and understand the power and meaning of a piece of Plymouth Rock being a doorstep, in the same way we could stand behind the Western Wall and see it as a place of God's abode, rejoicing at the worship of the Jewish people. In the same way we can model Jacob and look at a measly rock and see it as a pillow from which all dreams can sprout forth, then perhaps we will understand the power and the meaning of Thanksgiving. And it is not lost on me on this night that in a few short weeks, we will celebrate Hanukkah, and that beloved name for God that we use Mount Sor, Rock of Ages. Shabbat Shalom.